My name is Krissy D'Alejandro. I'm originally from McMinnville, Tennessee, Warren County, Tennessee. I now live in Knoxville, Tennessee. I graduated from Warren County High School and then attended college at the University of the South, also known as Sewanee, and then went on to graduate school at the University of Tennessee. I am the executive director of Tennessee Achieves, where I have now been working and serving students and families for over 13 years. I always had in my mind that I was going, which is actually quite surprising considering no one in my family had ever been to college before. In fact, my mom dropped out of high school when she was 15 years old, but somehow intrinsically just always knew that I was going. I will tell you though that it was scary and terrifying, and my parents were incredibly supportive throughout my entire journey. But I remember the summer, like leading up to actually like starting in the fall, having this like very strange pit in my stomach that I just could never like work through. And thinking back now, I remember feeling like, because it was so far-fetched for me and because I'd never really talked to anyone who had, I had friends who had gone, but they all sort of stayed local, and Sewanee's not far, but once I landed there, it felt like a million miles away from my small hometown. I remember just feeling like this won't actually happen. Like something bad will happen to me and I won't actually have the chance to go, which is just sort of a strange way of manifesting, I think, all the anxiety of being the first in your family, it not feeling like a normalized journey. But it was always sort of in my mind, I was going and thinking about the fact that, and I only applied to one college and thankfully got in. I made a lot of mistakes along the way, but out of just sort of a fire in my belly, made it to and through. Challenges, like at the time, I guess I didn't realize they were challenges, but the fact that like the financial piece was huge. I remember like being so excited the day that I received my early acceptance letter. My mom was working on a Saturday at the factory where she worked in our small town, and I called her and told her, like shouting and screaming. And my dad was in the garage working on his race car. And I remember going out and telling him, and he had this like strange look on his face, like happy, but the face was odd. And processing that now, understanding that he was trying to figure out how in the world they were going to pay for it. And so, that became a journey. I was paying off student debt until I was 35 years old, so long into the working world. I also had challenges. I was top of my class academically at my high school, but when I landed at Sewanee, I was not the top of my class. And my professors it sort of was all over my face that I was a fish out of water, if you will. But again, I think I learned pretty quickly that I wanted to be there. I wanted something different. Not that my life in McMinnville wasn't really great, but I just wanted something different with my life. And so I mustered up the courage to start pretty quickly advocating for myself and asking for help. And had I not done that, I probably wouldn't, I certainly would not be where I am now. But asking for help and saying like, hey, I'm the kid that like really has no idea what's going on, but I'm committed to being here, was a huge deal for me. In the classroom, like what was the Socratic method? I'd never heard of that before, but my chemistry professor was very much rooted his classroom in the Socratic method. And I cannot tell you how many times he was like, Krissy, for an answer that I didn't have. And I was like mortified because, in my high school, I was sort of a nerd. I was like the nerdy, smart kid. And then when I got there, I was just sort of, again, that student who found themselves struggling within the first few weeks of school. I hadn't had chemistry since 10th grade, and then to have like sort of this advanced chemistry I also struggled in writing papers. My first paper, the top portion had my professor's signature and have you ever written a paper before? It was deflating and demoralizing. But it was, again, a great building opportunity for me. I just decided that I was going to be successful. And I think what I've realized in the journey since that time, and especially leading Tennessee Achieves, is that it really is 90% about mindset and attitude. Like, I was going to make it regardless of what barrier you put in front of me. Certainly not on my own. I asked for a lot of help and I had a lot of support, but it was predetermined that I was going to make it through, in my mind anyway. And so it just sort of continued to try it one step at a time, one day at a time, knocking down the various obstacles that were presented. Well, it's been everything for my kids. Like, I remember, even though it felt predetermined that I was going, in my head, I didn't ever really vocalize that as a kid. I wasn't talking about going off to college until much later in my maybe middle school, high school journey. But my kids, my three children, 5 and 7 and 11, talk about going to college all the time. It's a constant conversation. My daughter wears one of my old Swanee t-shirts around and talks about like how she's gonna live with Henry, her little brother, and they'll go to Swanee together. My oldest son wants to go to Vanderbilt. And so, you know, it's just part of our culture in a way that it was not part of my family's culture. And again, stressing how amazing my parents were, but it just wasn't what we talked about around the dinner table. And my kids, we talk about it all the time. And we think about, okay, if you do want to go to Vanderbilt, what does that path need to look like now? And I think about what an advantage, not because I'm their mother, but just because all the lessons that I learned and all the mistakes that I've made have now allowed me to inform my three children of, well, Vanderbilt can be your destiny, but here, you know, we got to dig in now, and we've got to start thinking about things when you're 11, as opposed to, I didn't file the FAFSA because we didn't know it existed when I was 17. And so, you know, it's cycle breaking kind of work that we're in at Tennessee Achieves, but really it's about meeting students where they are and supporting them through it. And how amazing that my children get that when they're 11 and 7. Absolutely, my why has changed. I just wanted, probably like many of our students, to prove to myself that I could in fact be a college student and be successful. I am a highly competitive person, lots of fire going on in my belly at any given time around goals that I set for myself or my organization or whatever the case may be. So I think that was motivating. I also had this, this is like me being super vulnerable, but I wanted to like belong and feel like I was college material. There was like a piece of me that really needed to prove that, not to maybe anyone but myself. Now I think about the proposition of going to college and what that means for your long-term economic viability. The fact that we are in a pandemic and my husband owns restaurants, the hospitality business has been hit really hard during COVID, and the fact that I have a really wonderful career that allows me to sustain my family. I want my children to feel economically independent in that way. And so that's a big piece. I also want them to study things that they find interesting. And, you know, I think about that ongoing conversation in higher education about pointing students down a path where they can find that economic viability, but we've got to couple that with interest. And so I think, how do we continue to have those conversations with students about, yes, you can be economically viable in, you know, nursing, for example, which is an amazing career, but is this something that you're actually interested in? Does this like fire you up every day? Because I feel so fortunate that I wake up every day and like I'm still like want to light the world on fire, that I get to lead Tennessee Achieves. It's part of my identity. I mean, I think having a college degree opens up so many doors. I mean, I think about it just from like a networking standpoint. Like if I meet someone and they went to Swanee, like that's a door open. Or I meet someone that went to the University of Tennessee, there's a common language, there's a commonality that opens doors for future opportunities or leadership positions within civil organizations in the community. I mean, we all know the statistics, right? You're more likely to vote. You're more likely to take better care of yourself with a college degree. But in my mind, what a college degree really does is provide like a heightened sense of curiosity. Like you constantly, or I feel like for me anyway, that it just constantly like has like fostered this love of learning and growing. And I want to constantly like be a person who is pursuing like a better sense of self. And really that started with earning my college degree, or the journey to earning my college degree. And it's so it's fulfilling. And that's what I hope for our students is they find something they're really passionate about. It allows them to feel alive in a way that maybe they've never felt before, or they've never seen that spark in their parents' or grandparents' eyes that they now have for the career that they have the opportunity to pursue every day. And it also makes them cultivate a love of giving back. I mean, obviously 8 hours of community service is there to really start those juices flowing for students, but I hope that is something that they carry through adulthood. We don't hire anyone at Tennessee Achieves without a college degree. So I think it is that foot in the door. But, we're looking for not a specific major or degree. We're looking for a specific work ethic. And I do think that comes with how you pursue college. So it's less about if you pursue college, but how you pursue college allows you to be a successful employee at Tennessee Achieves. A member of our team is really great at critical thinking. They have great writing skills, communication skills. All day, this job is about communicating with various stakeholders. Can you pivot from a highly successful business person who's serving as a critical mentor for our program to talking to a 17-year-old about the differences between a community college and a four-year university? And so that versatility of thought and that ability to weave in and out of conversations is what sets you apart, I feel like, from your peers. And so it's less about if you're pursuing post-secondary and more about how you pursue it. Are you approaching it with fire in your belly? Are you eager? Are you passionate about the mission and the work? I think all of those things are something that are characteristics and traits that we look for at Tennessee Achieves. But I would say that applies to nearly every, peer, people who work at the college, people who work in K-12, people who work in business and industry across Tennessee and the country. I would say all of those apply.